The transfer talk continues as Arsenal prepare for their penultimate game of the season this Sunday. Will it be Gyokeres? Will it be Sesko? Or will it be somebody completely different? We're going to discuss all the latest info when it comes to the Gunners' pursuit of that elusive number 9. We'll do all of that and more on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Hey, everybody. How are we doing? Happy Friday. Welcome back to the show. Sorry we're not live streaming today. I have set this to premiere as if it is a live stream, but due to what I can only describe as a childcare emergency, we've had to just slightly adjust the plan today. We're still sticking to the right time, though, so I don't want any complaints on that front. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, I shouldn't say that, but I've got to look after my little girl this morning, which was not on the cards. Just something's come up, family thing, and I've had to keep her with me this morning. Now, the problem with that is that she's never going to sit quietly in the office alongside me and allow me to do a 45-minute podcast. It's just not going to happen. I did think about it. I did consider just sitting her on the sofa behind me, putting the headphones on her, giving her an iPad and seeing if she would last the distance. But I don't think it's going to happen. I figured this was probably the best course of action to ensure that we can deliver a good standard of podcast and ensure that we get it out without any problems and without any issues. Look, we've got quite a bit to discuss on today's episode. And when I woke up this morning, I didn't really think that there was that much out there. I planned to talk a little bit about Benjamin Sesko, and I planned to talk about Myles Lewis-Skelly being overlooked for the Young Player of the Season award. Now, we're still going to cover off both of those things. But I read a really, really interesting piece this morning from James McNicholas of The Athletic, aka Gunner Blog, whose work I admire a lot. And there was a few really kind of interesting nuggets of information in his piece. And so I figured that we could kind of run through those talking points, discuss them, and bring you guys up to speed with exactly what's been said, what's been written, and what the latest is on a number of players that we continue to be linked with. So we're going to talk Gyokeres, we're going to talk Sesko, we're going to talk Watkins, we're going to talk Nico Williams, Rodrygo, Jamie Gittens, Joan Garcia. There's quite a bit to unpack this morning, which I think makes for a pretty good show. And I guess the best place to start is probably with Viktor Gyökeres then, because this is a story that rumbles on and on and on and on. We're probably not going to do a podcast without talking about Viktor Gyökeres or without having his name in the title for a good few months now, because I don't imagine that this is something that will be wrapped up very, very quickly. I know Arsenal fans get agitated. I know that all fans get agitated in these types of situations. You know a player is there. You know that your club want him. You know roughly, or you think you know at least, roughly what it's going to take to get that deal done. But there are other things going on in the background. There'll be other factors at play that we just won't be privy to. And so my message when it comes to Gyokeres or Sesko, depending on which one it is that you want and which one that you think the club are going to move for in the end, if indeed it is any of those two guys, you just need to be a bit patient. And remember, the Premier League season is not over yet. The transfer window is nowhere near open yet. So we're in this place where we're hearing of deals sort of being put in the pipeline, deals being prepared, etc., etc. But if you're going to lose your shit about how long these deals are taking, just stop, look at the calendar, and remember that we're still in the middle of May is kind of what I would say. Yes, we're going to talk about this stuff because we do believe some of it's going to happen. We're going to talk about this stuff because we do believe that Arsenal are very, very strongly pushing now to bring in a centre forward. But things take time, and, you know, we're not at that critical point yet. Now, I said this for a lot of the January transfer window. I do realize that. And a lot of the time, you know, particularly in the first couple of weeks, people were going to me, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you pushing the club? Why aren't you desperate to see us go out and do the business that we need to? Well, first of all, I have no power to push the club. So that's the first thing. And secondly, I was very calm and relaxed because it is not unusual for the bulk of transfer business to be done towards the back end of a window. That is not unusual at all, right? Both sides will be negotiating. Both sides are trying to get the best possible deal. The player's trying to get the best possible deal for him as well. And what happens is normally when you get to the latter stages of the window and things become a little bit more desperate and time becomes a bit more of a constraint and a bit more of an issue, naturally people start to be a little bit more open to the idea of making concessions in their negotiations and backing down on certain things that previously they'd had a really kind of hard line on. So that's the way that business works, right? That's just the art of negotiation. So yeah, don't stress too much about these things just yet. It is very, very early. In fact, the window isn't even open. This is not even me telling you it's early in the window. We're not even at the window yet. We're not even at the end of the season. So what did James McNicholas report about Viktor Gyökeres? What's the latest on that then? So he reports that Gyokeres remains firmly in the frame as an option for Arsenal this summer. He still has that 100 million euro release clause that I think a lot of people will probably put off by, I should say, maybe a year or so ago. It's certainly the thing that kind of turned me away from Viktor Gyökeres when I was discussing options last summer. But it's understood now that Sporting would be willing to accept a fee in the region of 60 to 70 million pounds. That is significantly less money than the 100 million euros. If you're talking 100 million, you're probably talking something like 88, 89 million pounds, just off the top of my head. The fact that that's come down to a kind of top end of 70, it's quite a big discount. It's like a 20% discount. It's a lot, right? So that makes the appeal of Viktor Gyökeres much bigger. Certainly for me, anyway. That's how I feel about it. And ever since Andrea Berta's come in, it feels like the Gyokeres story and rumors have really kind of gathered pace, because it is said that he is very, very keen on the player, that he was looking at him back when he was at Atletico Madrid. And so you start to wonder, given that previously we'd heard lots about Benjamin Sesko, and obviously the Alexander Isak thing is the best case scenario, but that's looking increasingly unlikely. Viktor Gyökeres, it felt like, wasn't really in the frame prior to Berta's arrival. It was a name that fans talked about. It was a name that we discussed, and it's a name that's always going to catch your eye because of how many goals he's scoring. But it never really felt to me anyway like this was a serious option for Arsenal. He was a player there, striker, number 9, scores a lot of goals, doing it in the Champions League, doing it in Europe. And so naturally, if you think about it, club needs number 9. There's a number 9 scoring a lot of goals that has a history in English football. That felt like a convenient link more than anything else. I just wonder now if, given what we understand about Berta's feelings around the player, big fan, supposedly, the new Arsenal sporting director, are we going to see a first kind of mini power struggle now between him and Mikel Arteta? Because it feels to me like Arteta had his sights set elsewhere. And this is just a feeling. I don't know this. This is just my gut. This is what I would kind of assume. And I know assumptions are dangerous, but it's what I'd kind of imagine, given sort of the reports that we'd read previously. If we get Viktor Gyökeres in over Benjamin Sesko or one of the other options that we've been looking at for a while, is that Andrea Berta winning? Is that Andrea Berta sort of stamping his authority on things and saying, this is the guy, this is the one I want. He will help you. He'll be a great asset to your team. We're going to go out and do this. And is that then the beginning of the kind of taking away some of the power from Mikel Arteta? Now, I've heard some people over the last few days say that Mikel Arteta has all the power in transfers. No, he bloody doesn't. And he's never said that. I don't know why there are claims that he said that he's completely in control. No, that's not the case. If that was the case, I promise you, Arsenal would have gone out and got a striker in January. They probably would have paid what was required to get Ollie Watkins in through the door. The fact that that didn't happen, and the fact that other deals that I'd imagine Mikel Arteta would have wanted haven't happened, it tells you and it gives you an indication that there is more people that these types of decisions have to go through, as it should be, by the way. I'm not slating that. I think that's the right way. You need a hierarchy. You need multiple people making decisions, because you need to sanity check each other's work. I really do believe that. To have a strong, competitive and elite environment, you need that. You need challenge. You need people to challenge one another when it comes to certain decisions. So the Gyokeres thing, it's interesting. He's still in the frame. He's obviously available for significantly less than we originally believed, which I think adds to the appeal of this potential transfer. Now, on Benjamin Sesko, James McNicholas reported that he's still a strong candidate. His numbers this season aren't quite as striking, you got to say that, versus Gyokeres. 21 goals and 6 assists in 44 club appearances across all competitions. But the fact that RB Leipzig have, I think, really underperformed this season, they're not going to make the Champions League. And that, in my opinion, the Bundesliga is a stronger league than the Portuguese top flight. I think you could make a case and make an argument that the numbers thing, we should kind of shelve it when it comes to Benjamin Sesko. And look, we've seen this before. I remember back in the day when we were linked with Alexander Isak, right? We were linked with him. He had this release clause of what I remember as being something around about 90 million euros. We didn't want to pay that. Nobody wanted to pay that. In the end, Newcastle took a gamble and took a punt and ended up getting the player actually for significantly less. They ended up picking up the player for, what was it, 60, 65 million, whatever it was. So way below what that release clause was. But they didn't obsess over the numbers because at that point, the numbers for Isak weren't really there. What they did was they sort of gambled on his talent and they backed their ability to identify a top player in the making. Alexander Isak has come, he's kicked on, he's pushed on, and now we're talking about him as the striker that we all want, but we know he's out of reach because he's so damn good, he's going to cost so much money. So numbers are important, and Gyokeres versus Sesko, there's no competition on the numbers. Gyokeres is head and shoulders above the Slovenian. There's not even a debate there. But sometimes you have to back your ability as a football club to identify talent. And I think when it comes to Benjamin Sesko, there is a talent there. We just might have to shelve the numbers conversation and ensure that we're prefacing that at least with the context. RB Leipzig underperforming as a team. RB Leipzig struggling on the whole. How much of that is down to Benjamin Sesko? How much of a difference and an impact could he have made on that? I think you have to factor that in. I think you have to think about it. But by all accounts, this is the guy that we've, and I quote, done the most work on. He's the one that everybody has been talking about for quite some time. He's the one that if you'd have asked me 3 months ago who Arsenal were going to sign, I'd have said that's the most likely outcome, that Benjamin Sesko leads the line for Arsenal moving forward. Now, people have said that, and I've said it as well, so I don't want to just chuck this on other people, but I've heard it spoken of widely. It's not just my opinion. I think it's a general opinion. People have said that with Sesko, you don't quite feel that right now he's the finished article. And that concerns people. It concerns me because I feel like Arsenal need to be signing players for the here and now, not for the tomorrow. And so then it got me thinking about the kind of pressure that whoever this number 9 is going to be under when they arrive at the football club. Viktor Gyökeres is older. He's experienced English football before. He's in a rich vein of form. His confidence is probably sky high. I would bet that he's in a better position to handle that from the beginning. But is his ceiling as high as Benjamin Sesko's? That's the other debate that you need to have. Now, when it comes to Benjamin Sesko, I do worry a little bit about him being just a little bit undercooked. But at the same time, with Kai Havertz returning, he isn't necessarily going to have to shoulder that burden as a number 9 by himself. He's going to have someone at the football club whom he can share that role with. And I know people are going to start saying in the chat, Havertz ain't good enough, blah, 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 blah. That is categorically untrue. The guy was on course for a 25-goal season prior to picking up that injury. He's shown that he can score goals in this team. He's shown that he's a massive part of this team. Our creativity levels went off a cliff when he went out injured. And for me, that's the proof in the pudding. I don't need to keep preaching about Kai Havertz. Everybody that knows football can see it. Okay, so I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I'll circle back to it, is just that with Havertz at the club, maybe that makes you more comfortable in the idea of bringing in Sesko and allowing him that time to develop into the number 9 that we all hope he could be at Arsenal someday, if indeed we bring him in. Also, interestingly, James McNicholas reported that Ollie Watkins is still in the frame. Now, he said that Andrea Berta remains informed on the player's situation. Now, we do know that Arsenal explored a deal for the player back in January. Mikel Arteta, from what I understand, wanted the deal to happen. He wanted Ollie Watkins in through the door to ease the concerns and the issues that we had in that centre-forward position. It didn't happen. And from what we hear and from what we understand, the reason it didn't happen is because there were concerns around paying £40 million, which is what Aston Villa was said to be demanding at the time for a player that turns 30 at the end of the year. I said at the time that I disagreed with this approach. I still disagree with it now. In fact, when I talk about it now, it frustrates me even more because in the grand scheme of things, £40 million, if that's the difference between you getting over the line and not getting over the line, it's just a drop in the ocean. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous because £40 million to me is crazy money. And I'll probably never see £40 million in my entire life. Okay. In fact, I definitely won't see £40 million in my entire life. The point I'm trying to make is that, you know, if you really want to win, if you really want to get over the line, these things are arbitrary, man. Look at Manchester City, how many times they've pumped in money to get someone in that they thought could be a difference maker. Look at Chelsea. Look at Manchester United in the past. I know some of these clubs have gone backwards recently and they've gone about things the wrong way. And there is something cool about the fact that we, you know, we have values and we want to adhere to them and we want to be self-sustaining and all that. I mean, it's nice to say, but if you don't win, who cares? And so I personally would have paid the money for Watkins. And then I would have put the sort of new striker thing maybe on ice for another summer until, you know, we got a chance to have another look at it. And maybe then you get your Alexander Isak or whatever at a different price. Who knows? Maybe someone else emerges. I don't know. But I would have done it in January because I thought the need was desperate. We didn't. We overlooked it. We decided to pass on the option. And we didn't get Ollie Watkins. Will we get him in the summer? Don't know. Will we be able to push Aston Villa down in terms of what they're asking for because of the fact that we'll be, you know, 6 months further down the line? Maybe. If he's available then at 25, 30 million, is that more appealing? Who knows? But it's interesting to hear that Ollie Watkins is still in the frame. He also mentioned Hugo Ekitike and Joao Pedro, two players I like. But again, Joao Pedro is going to cost an absolute fortune because Brighton don't sell for cheap. And Hugo Ekitike, really talented, the most similar profile-wise to Alexander Isak based on some of the underlying numbers that we've looked at in previous shows. But again, there's an element of risk there, isn't there? For sure. Then we come on to wide players. Nico Williams was mentioned in this piece, long-standing interest in him, of course. The financials are going to be big, though, in terms of salary. We know what the release clause is, so that's not really too much of an issue. Rodrygo, we discussed him yesterday. Great player, but financially for me, that feels out of reach. And then there's Jamie Gittens of Borussia Dortmund. He said to have caught Arsenal's attention. I like what I've seen of Jamie Gittens, but I've got to be honest, I'd need to do some homework and some research on him because I don't know enough about him to sit and make a really strong case that says he's the one. But I do think bringing a winger in is necessary, whether that's Williams, Rodrygo, Gittens, or someone completely different. I don't know right now. I think Leandro Trossard's situation is important in this discussion as well. Not because we're going to get massive amounts of money for Trossard if we did decide to sell him going into the final year of his contract, but because salary is a big thing here. You know, that's ultimately the thing that ties your hands behind your back more than transfer fees. I really do believe that. It's about those ongoing rolling costs. And that's where clubs struggle. Onto the goalkeeping situation, Joan Garcia continues to be mentioned. He conceded a goal last night to Lamine Yamal, which was an absolute worldie. So I won't be pinning that on him. But obviously, again, another player that we were interested in the summer that we didn't sign. Arsenal at the time didn't want to pay the player's 25 million euro release clause. The 24-year-old's release clause could rise now to 30 million if he's either called up to the national team or if we enter into the last 15 days of the window. If we want to get him for the 25 million euro release clause or less, because even though these players in Spain have release clauses, that doesn't close the door to you negotiating a better deal with that selling club, right? That is the minimum that they have to accept. So if you go in, you go to La Liga, you hand in the 25 million quid or notice of you making that payment, then the release clause is triggered and there's nothing the club can do to stop him leaving. But that doesn't stop you agreeing a deal at 20 million or 18 million or 17 million or whatever. So you still have that ability to negotiate. And I think Arsenal will probably be looking at Joan Garcia again this summer and hoping that they can negotiate something. Because for me to spend 25 million euros on a second choice goalkeeper when you've got so much other work to do, it doesn't feel like a real good use of money. You know, when you imagine how little, and obviously this is assuming that David Raya stays fit and all that, but think about how little Neto played. Think about that. And then actually the fact that we loaned him and we didn't really outlay any money on it, actually that makes perfect sense. Now, Joan Garcia is one for the future. Neto isn't, looking at his age. But I think there are other things that need to be done first and foremost. And there are better uses of that money. And I think you can go and get a goalkeeper on the cheap to be a backup that could still be quite competent and still capable of coming in and out wherever necessary. So I think I would, if I was Arsenal, keep my powder dry on this one and see how it goes and make a decision on that a little bit later on in the window when I've got an idea and a picture in my head of how the rest of it is going to shape up. So yeah, looks like Andrea Berta is in for a really, really busy first summer at Arsenal Football Club. We knew that was going to be the case. Now he's got to actually act. I'm sure there are others working with him and around the clock to make all these things happen and to get us into the position that we want to be and go into the new season. But there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of moving parts. It is still May the 16th is what I'll kind of wrap the transfer chat up on. Myles Lewis-Skelly not being nominated for Young Player of the Season. I couldn't let the podcast pass by without discussing that. I can't think of many who at that age have broken into one of the top sides in the country and have had such an impact. The fact that he's not on the list is criminal. I can only imagine that it's because of the point in the season that he came into the side. Is that what it's about? Is that why he's been overlooked? But I just think he's been superb in so many ways. William Saliba's on that list, which is obviously good to see. But William Saliba's 24 now. Like the cutoff point for this Young Player of the Year thing, it's got to change, in my opinion. It's got to change. And with Myles Lewis-Skelly, it's not just about what he's done on the pitch. It's the character. It's the mental strength he's shown. It's all of those things. He's been a breath of fresh air. Has he had moments where he's been not a liability, but a bit of a problem for us? Yeah. Got himself sent off against West Ham because he tried to do too much. He's lost the ball in dangerous areas at times when he's tried to do too much. Obviously, the sending off at Wolves was overturned because that was, quite frankly, ridiculous. But with Myles Lewis-Skelly, you're in this place, right, where as a coach, you're looking at this kid and you're thinking, wow, this boy's ready. He's mentally there. He's physically there. He's really strong, really powerful. And that bravery and that fearlessness that comes with being a young lad and really kind of wanting to take on the world, it's great because it's seen us benefit so much. The goal he scored against Manchester City, the dribbles into midfield, the charges through the heart of opposition sides and getting us into really good and strong and advanced positions and being a bit of an outlet for us from left back, which is wild when you think about it. All of that is great. There is some risk to that. There is a downside to that at times, but you don't want to clip his wings. You don't want to stop him playing his game, especially not at this stage in his career, because you could stunt his development. You could see the player go back into his shell. Now, I think he's a really confident lad, and I don't imagine that's the very likely outcome, but it's possible. So managing him in the right way is really, really important. And I think Mikel's done that. I think he's given him the opportunity to go and show everybody what he can do. He's probably had to rein him in at certain points, which is understandable. He's an enthusiastic young man. But yeah, I just think him not being on this list is criminal and really, really poor. Again, I know the pushback will be, yeah, but look at the timing of when he came into the team versus, some of the others who've been doing it all season. I just think for me, give the guy his dues. Like, I'm not even saying that he should definitely win it, but he should be in the shortlist for sure. For sure. Anyway, I am going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on this morning's pod. Again, sorry it wasn't a live one. Childcare issues have sort of just slightly altered the plan for my day. But we will be back with another episode tomorrow. Remember, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. Like this video if you're with us on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, whether that's Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. And if you're a YouTube viewer or you're not, and you fancy coming over to the YouTube channel, we are now 200 subscribers away from hitting that 40,000 milestone here on the YouTube channel. I would love it if you guys would come over and show your support so we can get to that milestone sooner rather than later. Thank you in advance to those of you that will do that. And I will see you all very, very soon. If you've got any questions, any thoughts on the topics that we've discussed today, leave them in the comments section and I'll pick up a few of them on the next live episode that we do. Thank you all once again. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great Friday. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.